And here we go, back now with part 2 of 2 for this week, week 8. So I gave you a little story of my own time when I took a risk, when I did something I didn't want to do. And even though some would say I didn't succeed, to me, I did succeed because I changed what success meant. I made a an objective, a successful goal that was achievable. Hard, but achievable. I was pinned the day before during practice sessions in less than a minute from the state champion. And yet the day of, in front of parents, I fought for 3 rounds and survived without getting pinned. Big success. So I ask you, what is your story, right? Do you want to share? Now, to be honest, you don't want to share everything with everyone, and you want to perhaps leave out some details. Remember back in Tuckman's stages of team development, there was forming, storming, norming, performing, or high performing. That's the goal of managers that transform. Well, during norming, you might share part of the story. During storming, you might not share any of it. During norming, you might give the full blown story, right? It's up to you, but you want to use, because you know your team is in certain stages of development, you'll want to expose yourself in different ways. Okay. And so you know that the goal is to build trust, and with trust, you're on your way to creating a high performing team. So, what's really important right now in any phase is that we want to get comfortable with being open. That's really what this is about. Um, maybe you could share a story about letting your guard down, or how others did, uh, or some other moment in your life. The whole point about being open is that we overcome what's called this fundamental attribution error, right? This fundamental attribution error where we falsely attribute negative behaviors to others' characters. We're attributing something to them, okay? Maybe we attribute other people's success to their environment, or success to character, right? They can be parts of it for sure. We're all built based on our experiences, but, right, that error or that success is not the person, right? And so we want to get to understand our team and share and know and let them know that we are the same in that regard, right? We want to come to understand each other in a more fundamental level, right? Learn how people are today. All of this increases the likelihood of empathy and understanding. And this is going to trump always judgment and accusation, etc. And of course, this is just good, solid leadership management and interpersonal skills coming to bear. Okay. Here's kind of a hierarchy that I like to share. It is uh, the path to team trust, because and team trust creates maturity. So you can follow the path yourself. We exchange basic information. This would relate to Tuckman's stages of forming, right? We exchange basic ideas and exchange feelings. This is all really part of norming. As we look as the manager that transforms, always to drive it to trust. That's our real goal, right? So we incorporate other tools through forming and storming and norming, like open communications, and we build a plan and we commit to the relationship and try and figure out or ask them directly, how are you, the individual, committed to the relationship? You learn to depend on each other. You're going in the right direction. You merge that with some independence, and now you become interdependent. And the whole goal to me is to create R cubed. That's a made-up term that stands for roles, relationship, responsibilities, and relationships. We often hear of roles and responsibilities. But I like to throw in their relationships, professional relationships, roles, responsibilities, and you have to define also relationships. And you can use this path as a guide in building that trust and growing your high performing team along the way. Now, the next topic I want to turn to this week, and the last one, is called How Do We Inspire and Influence Our Team as We're Building Trust? So we have this thing called the law of reciprocity. It's similar to the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That's the golden rule, right? And and this law of reciprocity is similar. It's vital when it comes to influence as a leader, manager, and persuasion. These interpersonal relationships I just mentioned, they have a reciprocal quality about them, right? We as humans are inherently wired to keep, I think, the scales of fairness balanced. This is why we don't like certain regimes that were clearly unfair or wildly unbalanced, right? Because we're wired for this. And it's unnatural to be outside of that balance. It's certainly not peaceful, right? And so, while some people are more sensitive to how much is being put on their scales, etc., there is this urge to reciprocate. And so we have this law of reciprocity. And for example, say there's someone we don't quite trust. This is reciprocity in a negative way. When we interact with that person, we likely are to communicate those suspicions through verbal and nonverbal actions. And in fact, nonverbals are 55% of what we're using to communicate, believe it or not our words, right? And so maybe we use unwarranted questioning. Maybe we furrow our eyebrows, and maybe it's a skeptical tone in our voice that we don't even realize, right? But the more the other person detects those untrusting behaviors, the more uncomfortable they will feel with us. And as a result, they may not fully disclose the information we need. And so this only confirms to that individual the expectations that they are untrustworthy, right? So the real question that will keep us up at night from, like The Matrix, the movie, right, is would you have broken the vase if I hadn't said anything, right? You walk down the hall, boom, broken vase, right? In other words, if we treated the other person as though they were trustworthy, would they behave in a more trustworthy manner? Interesting thought. And so there's an element of risk involved as you build trust. We talked in lecture 1 of this week about that. And so we want to use positive results to predict and leverage high expectations using these reciprocal relationships. That would be my point. The result is that people will see you as an ally rather than an enemy. And if we treat them in a positive way, they will fulfill our expectations, right? So we want to give unexpectedly, expect the best, use people's names when we're talking about them, praise, but make it a real praise, make it honest praise, concrete, and communicate in their style. We have our own style. We need to understand their style, right? As we communicate. All those are fabulous tools for you to consider. Now, there's also currency. And what we're talking about is a manager that transforms our influence currencies. You have to think, what currency do I have to influence others as I'm trying to build this trust team, right? And so we influence by exchange. This is about giving what the other person wants. Notice that. Giving what the other person wants, not in return for what you need, or in return for what you need. It's not about exchanging what the other person wants. We influence by exchange is about giving what they want in return for what you need. That's the currency you have. So we can create barriers in our lives otherwise, right? We want to make sure if we're going to use this concept of influence currency that we avoid the barriers, right? We don't want to assume everybody is our ally, right? We want to make sure that we clarify our goals and priorities. At the same time, we want to diagnose and accept the other person's currency. Their currency may not be ours, but we have to understand theirs, right, to give them what they want so that we can get what we want. And so we want to assess our resources relative to what the ally wants, and we want to diagnose our relationship with the ally. Really, very often, we are our own worst enemy as we foolishly build stumbling blocks based on the path that leads to success and happiness, right? Don't build stumbling blocks. We have to, they say this slogan, walk a mile in their shoes. That's empathy, right? Empathy is related to figuring out currencies. First, and this is a good time to pause the video and think about it. What is my currency? What do I want or need when I'm communicating in the workplace? And then think of a particular individual or two or three separately and say to yourself, what do they use as currency, right? What do they use as currency? Walk a mile in their shoes. Empathize with them. Do they need time because they have family issues at home or a sick parent is right? What's their currency? And go for it. Don't create barriers to using this currency. But I want to emphasize a couple. One is not assuming the other person is your potential ally, right? We want to make sure that we separate our situation from some ultimate conclusion. We want to search for common ground and assume the best, as I said, but not assume they're our ally. Trust has to be built. Barrier two was clarifying goals and priorities, right? Here's what we should do, or what we do. Here's what we do. We build a long list of what we want, right? We use intense personal needs to confuse the situation, and when we should be identifying primary goals from less important goals. Not everything is worth fighting for, right? We should ask ourselves, is this approach helpful? And be flexible. The third barrier I'd mentioned was diagnosing or accepting the allies' currency. So ask yourself, what are their currencies, right? This is what we're exchanging as we build trust, right? What are the goods and services of exchange? What do I want? What do they want, right? Because we're making trades for what we want in return for what others want as a currency concept. So if you have nothing the other person values, then you have nothing to exchange. You don't have to be the boss. It could be you're funny. It could be they can count on you. It could be if they need help with PowerPoint, you're that person, right? You have some currency. Understand what your value is, because if you have no value, you have nothing to exchange. Okay. When we're influencing currencies, we want to consider these items along the way. Okay, we want to use inspiration related currencies, right? And these are currencies that reflect inspirational goals, and they provide meaning to the work that a person does. There are task related currencies, which are directly related to getting the job done. They're focused on the available resources, etc. There are position related currencies based on maybe you're the boss or the value in the inner circle. A relationship based currency is more about connected to strengthening a relationship, acceptance, understanding, personal support. This personal currency, which is, gratitude, ownership, comfort, and negative currency, right? But only use something like that if you really had to. And then the last barrier was not assessing your resources relative to the others. That is a recipe for failure. And this is it. We have to diagnose that and figure out a good relationship.